Grab your coffee this morning. We're diving into the biggest story reshaping automotive that most people are missing. While everyone's debating EV adoption curves, the entire global factory map is being redrawn in real time.
Auto Intelligence is produced by AutoAgentic, and I'm Claire, part of the AutoAgentic team.
And I'm Steve. New episodes every Tuesday. Thanks to everyone joining us, the audience keeps growing, and your feedback keeps these conversations sharp.
Today we're unpacking a massive research report on geopolitics and automotive manufacturing. The numbers are staggering. US automakers paid more than $10 billion in tariffs in 2025 alone, and that's just from Canada and Mexico.
$10 billion. And here's what caught my attention immediately. Ford originally projected $1 billion in tariff costs, then had to revise that to $2 billion. GM hit $3.1 billion and expects $3 to $4 billion this year.
Those aren't rounding errors. Those are entire product program budgets being redirected to tariff payments.
Exactly, but here's the twist that makes this more than just a trade story. While these tariffs are crushing profit margins, they're also triggering the largest manufacturing migration we've seen since NAFTA. Chinese automakers are building factories from Hungary to Thailand. European manufacturers are bleeding jobs, 80,000 lost in components alone.
And the intelligence architecture implications are enormous. When you relocate a factory, you're not just moving metal stamping. You're rewiring supplier networks, logistics systems, quality protocols.
The entire operational nervous system gets rebuilt, which means the companies that understand how to coordinate intelligence across distributed manufacturing networks are going to dominate this transition.
So let's map this transformation. What are we really looking at when the global factory system restructures this quickly?
First, let's establish the scale. The Trump administration implemented a 25% tariff on all vehicles imported into the United States, effective April 3rd, 2025. Auto parts got hit with another 25% starting May 3rd.
But there's complexity in the USMCA rules. If you're importing from Canada or Mexico and your content complies with the agreement, you face that 25% tariff only on non-US content. If you don't comply, duties can hit 52.5%.
The regional value content requirement jumped from 62.5% under NAFTA to 75% under USMCA. And here's where it gets interesting. 40 to 45% of manufacturing labor must earn above $16 per hour.
That labor provision fundamentally changed the economics. Mexico imports 49.4% of its auto parts from the United States, then exports 86.9% of its auto parts production back to the US. The supply chains are deeply integrated,
which explains why even with these massive tariff pressures, Mexico remains critical. But the pressure is real. Mercedes reduced Mexican exports by 13.6% and is winding down production there entirely. The response has been swift and massive. General Motors announced $4 billion in U.S. manufacturing investment, shifting Chevrolet Blazer production from Mexico to Tennessee and Chevrolet Equinox from Mexico to Kansas, both starting in 2027.
GM is reopening its idled Orion Township, Michigan plant for full-size SUVs and pickups, plus $888 million into their Tonawanda, New York propulsion plant. They're targeting 2 million plus vehicles per year in US production.
But the biggest single investment comes from Hyundai, $12.6 billion for their Georgia Meta Plant complex. That includes vehicle assembly and joint battery ventures with LG Energy Solution and SK On.
The facility opened in late 2024 with 300,000 unit capacity, now expanding to 500,000. They're producing 10 models of electric and hybrid vehicles. Kia will produce vehicles there starting mid-2026.
Hyundai has committed to making more than 80% of its U.S. sold vehicles domestically by 2030. That's a fundamental strategic shift from import-heavy to manufacturing-heavy.
Mercedes is bringing a new high-volume model, likely the GLC class, to Tuscaloosa, Alabama starting 2027, while simultaneously ending vehicle assembly at their Mexico plant in 2026.
But here's the reality check. An ISM survey found 64% of manufacturers don't intend to bring production to the U.S. to avoid tariff costs. For many, it's still cheaper to go offshore or diversify into less tariff-impacted countries.
Which brings us to the real story. This isn't just about reshoring to America. This is about Chinese manufacturers going global at unprecedented scale.
Chinese automakers are transitioning from domestic champions to global manufacturers. China's vehicle exports are projected to exceed 6.5 million units in 2025, with over 35% being new energy vehicles.
Chinese origin brands accounted for approximately 26.5% of global vehicle production in 2025. That's 24.8 million units, an 18% year-over-year increase.
Since October 2025 alone, more than 15 Chinese automakers and parts suppliers disclosed overseas projects with combined planned investment exceeding $10.76 billion.
BYD began trial production at its Szeged, Hungary plant in January 2026, targeting mass production in Q2. The facility has planned maximum capacity of 300,000 vehicles annually.
And their $1 billion plant in Turkey is expected to exceed 150,000 vehicles in 2027. But it's not just BYD. CATL and Stellantis broke ground on a €4.1 billion lithium iron phosphate battery plant in Zaragoza, Spain.
CULB signed a €2.06 billion battery plant contract in Portugal. These aren't pilot projects. These are massive industrial complexes designed to serve European demand from inside European borders.
The driver is overcapacity. Designed capacity for mainland China-based auto manufacturers exceeded 46 million units in 2024, while annual domestic sales are forecast to average only about 28 million units through 2030.
So exports and overseas production keep plants running at profitable capacity. The coordination of overseas localized production and domestic exports is expected to push overseas sales of Chinese automotive brands past 10 million units by 2030.
You're listening to Auto Intelligence, produced by AutoAgentic.
AutoAgentic is building the intelligence foundation for the automotive industry. And what we're discussing today, this massive global factory reshuffling, perfectly illustrates why intelligence architecture matters more than individual AI tools.
Think about what GM is actually doing when they move Blazer production from Mexico to Tennessee. It's not just relocating an assembly line, they're rewiring supplier relationships across 3 countries, restructuring logistics networks that span thousands of miles, recalibrating quality protocols, rebuilding inventory management systems.
Each of those operational domains has its own data flows, its own decision points, its own optimization requirements. Most organizations approach this with separate tools. One system for supplier management, another for logistics, another for quality, another for inventory.
But here's what AutoAgentic recognized early. Automotive doesn't suffer from a lack of AI tools. It suffers from a lack of intelligence architecture. Tools multiply, but coordination stalls.
When Hyundai builds that $12.6 billion Georgia complex, they're not just installing manufacturing equipment, they're creating an intelligence ecosystem that needs to coordinate battery chemistry decisions with supply chain logistics, production scheduling with quality metrics, workforce management with regulatory compliance.
From 2024 through 2025, the industry built foundations, organizations explored, tools spread, but intelligence remained fragmented. 2026 is different.
This is the year automotive shifts from pilots to playbooks, from isolated AI use cases to coordinated intelligence systems that can handle the complexity we're discussing today.
AutoAgentic is working directly with select automotive organizations this year to prove agentic coordination in real manufacturing environments and build the transformation playbooks that will define the next decade.
Because when Chinese manufacturers achieve that 30% cost advantage in EVs, it's not just about battery technology or labor costs. It's about intelligence systems that can coordinate integrated supply chains, optimize production flows, and adapt to market changes faster than fragmented toolsets ever could.
From 2027 onward, intelligence moves to the ecosystem level. By 2030, agentic orchestration becomes the standard for industry leaders who survive this geopolitical reshuffling.
That's the future AutoAgentic is architecting. Not following the shift, but designing it.
Now back to the episode. While Chinese manufacturers expand globally, Europe is experiencing what can only be called a manufacturing crisis. The Eurozone manufacturing PMI has been below 50 for 26 consecutive months.
Energy costs remain approximately 3 times higher than in the US. The European automotive components industry lost nearly 80,000 jobs in recent years. In 2025, for the first time, the EU faced an automotive trade deficit in new mobility components.
Germany is the epicenter. Bosch announced 13,000 additional job cuts on top of 9,000 already announced. Ford Cologne moved from 2 shifts to 1, losing 1,000 jobs.
Volkswagen threatened to close 3 or more German plants, but ultimately agreed with unions to cut costs elsewhere and reallocate some production to Mexico. ZF, MAN, Stabilus, they're all announcing significant layoffs.
Here's what's driving this. Chinese manufacturers benefit from a 30% price advantage in EVs, driven by integrated supply chains, innovative battery chemistries, and concentrated mineral refining capabilities.
As they begin producing inside Europe, they're intensifying competition in the mass market segment where European manufacturers are already struggling. McKinsey notes the industry is moving toward regional globalization, localized innovation driving both regional success and global competitiveness.
But it's not just cost advantage. Chinese manufacturers are building complete ecosystems. When BYD builds in Hungary, they're not just assembling vehicles. They're creating integrated supply networks that European competitors struggle to match. Let's talk about the emerging manufacturing hubs, because this is where the future gets really interesting. India is experiencing its moment. Toyota, Honda, and Suzuki have committed investments totaling over $22 billion.
S&P Global projects India will lead global sales growth in 2026, adding 400,000 units. Key advantages include low operational costs, extensive labor force, and crucially, a market largely closed to Chinese EVs.
Which means Japanese manufacturers face minimal competition from BYD and other Chinese rivals. JSW MG Motor India is investing $441 million to triple halal plant capacity to 300,000 units.
Indian automotive component exports are expected to double by 2028. But here's what's fascinating. Saudi Arabia is emerging as an automotive manufacturing destination under Vision 2030.
Hyundai is building their first Middle East production facility in King Abdullah Economic City, $500 million joint venture, 70% Saudi PIF, 30% Hyundai, targeting 50,000 vehicles annually.
Lucid Motors, 60% owned by Saudi PF, opened their first international manufacturing plant in Saudi Arabia with 155,000 vehicle annual capacity.
Morocco reached 1 million vehicles produced in 2025, placing it among the world's top 15 manufacturers. Renault's Tangier and Casablanca plants produced nearly 400,000 vehicles, with 82% exported to 63 destinations.
Morocco is now Renault Group's second largest country for production volume. Automotive exports surged by roughly 27% year over year to nearly $13.9 billion.
Now let's address the critical vulnerabilities in this new system. The automotive sector spends approximately $60 billion annually on semiconductors, and Taiwan accounts for over 60% of global semiconductor production.
TSMC's dominance of advanced chip manufacturing makes the automotive industry acutely vulnerable to any disruption in the Taiwan Strait. The US has been using tariff leverage to push semiconductor reshoring.
Officials aim to move roughly 40% of Taiwan's chip production capacity to American soil. TSMC has pledged $165 billion to build factories in Arizona.
But Taiwan has pushed back, calling the 40% target impossible and warning that its semiconductor ecosystem, built over decades, cannot simply be relocated through capital investment alone.
The practical constraint is that advanced chip fabrication depends on thousands of interlinked suppliers, toolmakers, vendors, and specialized engineering teams, a cluster that cannot be replicated overnight.
And this is where intelligence architecture becomes critical. When your supply chain spans continents and depends on thousands of interdependent relationships, manual coordination breaks down. You need systems that can track, predict, and orchestrate across this complexity.
Let's look ahead through 2030, because the patterns emerging now will define the industry for the next decade. Regional proximity strategies that prioritize tariff avoidance and supply chain resilience have become economically essential.
Regional supply chains achieve 25% faster response times and 15% lower total landed costs compared to tariff-affected global chains. McKinsey describes this as regional globalization.
Global light vehicle sales are expected to remain roughly flat at 91.8 million units in 2026, with production at 92.6 million units. But the automotive market is forecast to reach $3.26 trillion by 2030.
North American production is forecast to return to mid-2019 levels by 2030, driven by capacity expansions and reallocation toward BEV, HEV, and advanced ICE vehicles.
Here are 3 scenarios to watch. First, if U.S.-China decoupling deepens and the Taiwan semiconductor risk materializes, expect accelerated reshoring and Chinese OEMs potentially locked out of the U.S. market entirely.
Second, Chinese OEMs achieve true global scale. With overseas production expected to exceed 10 million units by 2030, they could fundamentally reshape competitive dynamics globally.
Third, the China Plus 3 reality. OEMs will diversify component sourcing across India, Mexico, Eastern Europe, and Southeast Asia. Companies will pay 5 to 10% premiums for regional suppliers to ensure supply chain security. So what's your biggest takeaway from this massive reshuffling, Claire?
3 things hit me hardest. First, the speed. $10 billion in tariff costs in 1 year, forced decisions that normally take decades. When Ford had to revise their tariff projections from $1 billion to $2 billion, that wasn't just a financial adjustment, that was a complete strategic recalibration in real time.
The operational complexity is staggering when you think about it.
Second, the Chinese manufacturing expansion isn't just about volume. It's about creating complete industrial ecosystems that competitors struggle to match. When BYD builds in Hungary, CATL builds in Spain, Calbee builds in Portugal, they're not just establishing production capacity, they're creating integrated intelligence networks that span continents.
And third,
the intelligence coordination challenge. When GM shifts Blazer production from Mexico to Tennessee, that's not just moving an assembly line. That's rewiring supplier relationships, logistics networks, quality systems, inventory management, hundreds of operational connections that need seamless coordination.
And the companies that can coordinate that complexity intelligently will dominate this transition. The ones that can't will get overwhelmed by it.
Exactly, which brings us back to what we see emerging in 2026. This isn't just about manufacturing location anymore. It's about intelligence architecture.
That's exactly right. And here's what struck me personally about this research. Every location strategy and site selection decision in the automotive industry is now influenced by geopolitical considerations. Whether it's tariff policies, local content requirements, the risk of economic coercion, or semiconductor supply chain vulnerabilities.
Companies that build flexible, multi-regional manufacturing footprints and invest in regional production agility will be best positioned to thrive. But that flexibility requires intelligence systems that can coordinate across that complexity.
The winners will be those who treat factory location not as a cost optimization exercise, but as a strategic hedge against an increasingly fragmented world. And they'll need intelligence architecture sophisticated enough to evolve with that fragmentation.
What fascinates me is that we're watching the birth of truly global automotive companies. Chinese manufacturers building in Hungary and Turkey, European companies expanding in Morocco, American companies reshoring from Mexico, Indian companies becoming export hubs, Saudi Arabia creating domestic automotive capability.
But each regional cluster needs its own operational intelligence. The question for automotive leaders is whether they're building point solutions for each region, or intelligence architectures that can evolve and coordinate across all of them.
Because the next disruption, whether it's Taiwan semiconductor risks, escalating trade wars, or breakthrough battery technologies, will test that coordination like never before.
And here's the thing that keeps me thinking about this research. The automotive industry is restructuring at unprecedented speed, but most organizations are approaching it with legacy coordination methods, manual handoffs, fragmented data flows, siloed decision-making.
When you're managing supplier relationships across 46 countries, coordinating production schedules across 12 time zones, and optimizing inventory flows across regulatory environments that change weekly, human coordination hits its ceiling fast.
Which is why intelligence architecture becomes the competitive differentiator. The companies that can coordinate complexity intelligently will write the playbooks everyone else follows.
And the companies that can't coordinate that complexity will find themselves paying premium prices for regional suppliers, suffering supply chain disruptions, and losing market share to competitors who mastered distributed intelligence.
This episode was produced by the team at AutoAgentic. AutoAgentic exists to solve a problem most vendors overlooked. Automotive doesn't suffer from a lack of AI tools, it suffers from a lack of intelligence architecture.
While most platforms optimize tasks, AutoAgentic is designed to coordinate organizations. Our platform brings together more than 75 specialized automotive agents into a single enterprise intelligence system that operates across dealerships, dealer groups, and OEM environments.
This is not AI layered onto workflows. It is intelligence embedded into operations. AutoAgentic is built on SOC2, Type 2 certified zero-trust enterprise infrastructure and designed to move organizations beyond the Level 3 coordination ceiling, where tools multiply but intelligence stalls.
Our agents share memory, context, and intent across systems, allowing organizations to replace manual handoffs with coordinated agentic execution. AutoAgentic is LLM agnostic by design, integrating the strongest capabilities from leading and emerging models while ensuring intelligence evolves without lock-in or architectural resets.
In 2026, AutoAgentic is working with a limited number of automotive organizations to apply this architecture inside real dealership, dealer group, and OEM environments, building the playbooks the industry will depend on over the next decade.
Learn more at autoagentic.ai. Special thanks to Barry Hillier, founder and CEO of AutoAgentic and the producer behind Auto Intelligence.
If you're seeing patterns in your organization that connect to today's conversation, whether it's supply chain coordination challenges, manufacturing location decisions, or intelligence architecture questions, we'd love to hear about them.
Send us your topic ideas, industry stories, companies and people shaping mobility, or feedback on how these intelligence coordination challenges are playing out in your environment. Barry at autoagentic.ai.
The automotive industry is restructuring at unprecedented speed. The intelligence systems you build today determine whether you coordinate that change or get overwhelmed by it. And the organizations that master distributed intelligence coordination will define what automotive becomes over the next decade.
The geopolitical reshuffling we discussed today isn't slowing down. If anything, it's accelerating. The question isn't whether your organization will face these coordination challenges. It's whether you'll have the intelligence architecture to handle them when they arrive.
Thanks for joining us. Talk soon.